Hello and welcome to the first gender pay gap report. For those of you that don't know, I am Michelle Jimmer from Equality Pays, and what I'm doing for the next 5 days is I'm going to look at 10 gender pay gap reports and do a quick analysis based on the data that they've provided, have a look at their action plans, and give a few extra tips and pointers for them to help them really start to move the dial when it comes to closing their pay gaps. So the first one I'm going to look at is for a firm that's in the construction industry, and they have less than 250 employees. So technically they didn't need to report because the threshold is for 250 or more. However, they felt that it's been good for them, a good idea. So they have a snapshot, which is why we've been able to look at it. So they have 78% men, 22% women. Considering it's a construction industry, that isn't very surprising because it is a traditionally male industry to be working in. Their mean gender pay gap is 18.9% and their median is 19.4%. So again, those figures are probably comparable, I would say, with their counterparts in their industry in the UK. Their bonus pay gaps, however, very, very revealing. They have the mean is 44.1% and the median is 25.2%. So quite high there. So I think there's a lot of questions to be asked about bonuses, who's entitled to them, who decides who gets what, and how they decide that as well. And if you look at the quartiles, i.e. where men and women are placed within the organisation, you can see that there's a cluster of women at the bottom, and as you move up the quartiles, they tend to essentially thin out. So they start at 34% in the lower quartile, and by the time you get to the upper quartile, they're at 10%. So there's a big discrepancy there, and obviously because there's less women in the organisation to start with, it's probably very easy to spot, or it's probably a stark reality to see how few women there are as you move up the quartiles. So that's the snapshot data that they provided as part of their narrative, as part of their report. Considering it's the construction industry, lots of those numbers don't surprise me. The bonus pay gaps, I think, is the most alarming thing, and obviously that's something that they would need to address and have a look at. So in terms of next steps, well, I've had a look at their action plan, and what I've decided to do is to give a few more tips as to what else they could do, how they can take it further to really move the dial. And the first thing that I would suggest that this firm does is to conduct an equal pay audit. And the reason why I'm suggesting that is because everybody should do an equal pay audit so that they can eliminate whether unequal pay is an issue that is causing the gender pay gap. And the reason I've picked this out particularly for this firm is because they have said in their narrative that they're confident that their pay gap is not rooted in unequal pay. However, for me, I would prefer it if they had the evidence, if they said that they were going to commit to doing regular pay audits. I would say that every 3 years is about the right amount of time to be doing it. And because it's a firm that has less than 250 people, it shouldn't be too much of an onerous task. And there's software out there to help you, and there are firms that can help an organisation do it. So if it does seem like something that's too daunting, then you don't have to do it in-house. You can always outsource that. But for this firm, I think it's really important, especially because they're quite small. So it's a good way for them to embed good practice in now, because I'm guessing that they're a firm that want to expand, want to grow, take on new business, new clients. That always means taking on new staff, creating new roles. And it's when organisations take on more people, it's always a good idea to ensure that you've got those good practices, and doing regular equal pay audits, I would say, is an essential good practice. And it's much easier to embed it into the culture while the firm is still relatively small, rather than trying to rectify a problem that's got out of hand when they're much bigger. So that's the first thing I would say. The next thing is around unconscious bias training. In their narrative, they said that they were going to look at unconscious bias in terms of recruitment, and they're going to equip line managers with the skills to spot it and to obviously do something about it. Now, I would say two things. First of all, any unconscious bias training that you embark upon needs to be more than a workshop or a day seminar, because essentially that is just paying lip service. We all have our biases, and the fact is that we have been soaking them up and acting upon them since we were born. And so asking somebody to change the way that they behave, essentially, after a one-day workshop is too much. It's not going to work. It needs to be an ongoing thing. So whoever you decide to use for your training, you need to look for a training provider that's going to provide people the space to embed their learning, to make mistakes, to be challenged, to face obstacles, to get things wrong, to get things right, because it has to be on the job learning, and it has to be embedded in day-to-day practice, which is impossible to do if it's a one-day workshop. So whichever training provider this firm decides to find, I would advise that they find somebody that is looking at it from a much wider holistic approach rather than just a tick box exercise. The second thing I would say is that in this action plan, they've said that they are focusing it on recruitment, which is perfectly fine, but I would expand that and say actually it needs to be wider than that. There's no point in just looking at unconscious bias just in recruitment, because recruitment is only one small aspect of this business day-to-day operations. It's only a tiny aspect of somebody's career journey. What they really need to be doing is broadening it out to the business culture, the management style of the firm, how are promotions given out, all of the day-to-day practices, all of the decision making that goes on. That is where the unconscious bias training needs to be fed into. So it's not just in the hands of a few people and only at a specified time within their career or within their kind of management calendar. So unconscious bias training needs to be rolled out holistically, it needs to be meaningful, rolled out holistically, and it needs to be an ongoing thing for everybody in the organisation, not just a few and for a short space of time. And the third thing that I would say is that in this action plan, they said that they were going to look at their recruitment process because they want to try and attract more diverse talent. Again, perfectly commendable, nothing wrong with that. But what I would say is they need to ask themselves a few questions as well. And they need to say, where is it that women are falling out of their particular recruitment pipeline? Now, as I said before, the construction industry is well known for being a traditionally male industry. That's a fact. There's no getting away from that. However, that's not to say it's because that the women aren't out there. So what this organisation needs to do is take a look at their recruitment process and identify, well, where is it either that women are falling out of the talent pipeline, or where is it that they could be coming into it and they're not? So is it at job description stage? Are they looking at job adverts and thinking, I don't see myself fitting in there? So that's around looking at the language, looking at what skills you're asking for, etc. Are they applying for roles but not getting through the sifting process? So that's around looking at who are the kind of gatekeepers, who are the decision makers, who gets to decide who has the skills that they're looking for and to invite them into interview. Is it that women are not getting past that stage? Or is it that they're coming to interview but they're not being offered the job, they're just not getting to that final hurdle? And again, looking at, well, how do you decide which person is the best person for the job? Are you looking for somebody that looks like everyone else in the office? Are they looking for somebody that mirrors, the people that are hiring? And so that's something to consider. And another point to consider, or is it that women are being offered the job, but they're not taking it? And if that's the case, you need to find out why. So the recruitment process has different phases within it. And so for this organisation, I would, say to them that they need to be looking at all of those phases that I've just mentioned and see where it is that they're essentially hemorrhaging potential talent. And in this case, it's to do with gender pay gap, so female talent, and looking for ways to counteract that and kind of change that narrative. And that's it for this one. So like I said, this video is just based on tiny snapshot. It's based on the information provided in the gender pay gap data. I was working on what was said, kind of looking between the lines and trying to find ways to help this organisation think outside the box, or think a bit bigger, think a bit bolder, and to try and avoid the usual pitfalls that some organisations face when they say that they're going to kind of look at their gender issues. So thank you for watching this video. I hope that you've enjoyed it and it's given you some food for thought. If you think that there is something in there for you, something that you hadn't considered for your organisation, if you recognise your firm in the data that was presented to you and you want to talk to me about closing your pay gap, then please do get in touch. My email address is on the screen, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.